The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of state in Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people just like me. This is 3D Politics. Here we are again with me, the Verbal Viking, every Monday night on Facebook Live, right here. Every Monday night, the independent source of information. And remember, next year, we're working into 3D culture wars. So no kidding, if you are an artist who does music, original, and if you do art, entertainment, and otherwise, send me your information or a link to what you do at verbalviking@gmail.com. And next year, we're going to start featuring some of that stuff. But tonight, we have one of the experts here, maybe the expert, on medical and recreational marijuana, Director Jed Green. Jed Green is the Director of Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action. And there's a couple of petitions that have been filed recently. State Question 818, the medical, State Question 819, adult access. Tonight we're going to talk about both those petitions, which will affect Oklahoma constitutional amendments. So both of them will be constitutional amendments. Oklahoma's role in federal legalization. OMMA, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority. We're going to talk about that and updates to the legislative body here in Oklahoma. Industrial hemp versus recreational marijuana. Some of the people know all about that, and we're going to have Jed Green tell us more about it. Specialty crops. Here's something I learned about just recently preparing for this interview. I want him to teach us about the designation of specialty crops, and he is going to talk to us about enforcement, different things having to do with illegal grows, rural water supply strains, industry waste management, and how O.R.C.A, that is O.R.C.A, is looking for streamlined regulations. You're going to find out more about O.R.C.A, that is the Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action at O.R.C.A.OK.com. That's O.R.C.A. OK.com. So, without further ado, let's see if we can reach Jed by radio contact. Are you there, Jed?
Yes. Can you hear me, sir?
Wow, that's amazing how the technology works. Scotty, let's beam the guy in. Let's see how it works. See if we can beam him in, and should be able to see him. Now, let's see. Beam him from the planet's surface. There he is. Jed Green, fantastic. Wow, this is...
I have landed.
Technology just gets better and better around here. So very good. Hey, I forgot to thank Mark Sherwood for showing up last week. He's running for governor of Oklahoma, and he is also speaking at the same place, the Boots and Bling event, December 10th, out there at... the Redneck Yacht Club. But without delaying any further, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in, I know somewhere you've said you've done construction, campaigns, and cannabis. How did you get started like that? And then we'll move into all the wonk.
So that's me. I've done those three things over the last 30 years or so. Construction, campaigns, and cannabis. Started doing construction, built a lot of stuff, just about every trade, hands-on one way or the other, and did a lot of energy efficient, disaster resistant homes. And then, late 20s, that was kind of wearing out, the elbows start going. And so I thought, well, let me go get into something else. And long story short, I wound up in dealing with politics. And, cannabis is something that, I, like a lot of people in Oklahoma, have been involved in for some time. And so when the opportunity came to, move the ball forward in that on this issue, I hopped in and did that. I've also in the political side, I've done campaigns here in the state for about 15 years. So that's a real Reader's Digest version of a long road traveled. But
that's understandable.
That's it.
Real quickly before we move off of it, director of the Yes on 788 PAC, is that correct? You were the
Yes,
director of the
yes,
Yes
yes.
on
So
788, which is where this all kind of starts, or was that along the way?
So I kind of came into that process midstream. State Question 788 was the result of a third attempt by activists across the
Okay.
state to achieve ballot access. On their third pass, they were successful. And so when the governor at the time, Fallon, proclaimed a date for that election to be the June 26, 2018 primary, um, I reached out to the folks that had achieved the ballot access. I reached out to folks that I knew who were looking at getting involved in the industry and were starting associations. And I worked to bring together the hopeful industry and the hopeful activists into a cohesive campaign effort in order to achieve victory, which we did.
So yeah, you had some great success in that, up against some great odds, bringing together industry and activists. You don't have to be crazy about politics to get involved. If you can simply read it and understand it and explain it, they want you to come help. So real quickly, let's talk about the difference between State Question 818 medical, State Question 819, adult access, and anything pertinent or that I may have misspoken.
Well, there is no, you're good. 818 is medical. 819 is a right to use, full access, 21 and over, recreational. However you want to, color that rose. And those are the two. We wanted to provide Oklahomans with a couple of options. Number one, first and foremost, first rule is do no harm. So we want to protect the medical program that we have. And we want to do some things to kind of, augment and lock in our patient rights and protections, and then do some things to help clean up the regulatory side of things. And then we also believe that Oklahomans should have the option to really achieve freedom on this issue with the passage of recreational. So we don't want to mess up a good thing that we have going. We want to keep the success. We want to clean up the mess that we've got on a few different levels on the medical side, but at the same time, until we pass a recreational law, we're going to be stuck in this weird, terrible gray area of quasi-federal legality. And at the end of the day, the question of recreational for everyone really is this: it is, where does the money go? Is the money going to stay with our businesses, ultimately some flow into the government through taxation, or are those dollars going to go to fund illegal organizations?
All right,
It really
so
is an
before,
either or.
okay, because I do have questions on taxes and money flow, et cetera, and so that's you're jumping a little bit ahead of me. So that explains, though, a lot of the pressures there. I understand what you're saying. We don't want to open up the can to make an adjustment and then break what was working already. But one of the questions I have is: Oklahoma one of the national? Is it the national leader on federal legalization? Who else? I mean, who's leading the charge along with us if we're not the leader in federal legalization?
Well, I would pose that we are a leader in the push for federal legalization. I mean, it's an open secret that we've got the most open and inclusive medical program in the country. And that's because, we simply don't believe that the government should be in between the doctor and the patient and telling them what's good and what they can and can't do. And so we've broken a lot of ground there. We are the national champions of medical marijuana. There's no getting around that. And so, but again, there's still.
You've worked at the presidential level, it says also in your bio.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is also federal for you.
Well, it's one of those things where I'm kind of a homer at the end of the day. And I've worked over the last 15 years, I've worked with both parties. You know, a lot of folks would be shocked and recoiled to know that in 2008 I was Obama's state director
Oh my
here in
gosh. Shut her down.
Oklahoma.
Shut her down.
Yep,
Shut her down.
yep, yeah. Beam me back. Beam me back. It's
Scotty.
over. There's
Scotty.
no coming back. No, but see, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm fully transparent about who I am, and that's how I believe that, our government should be, so it's, I've done that, and I've done a lot of local and municipal races, obviously issues. And, I think it was 2011, I re-registered independent. And that's how I see myself, as I'm just someone that is here to advance issues, and I'll work with whoever is in the right direction on the issue. And ultimately, we do see that with cannabis is a massive across party lines type of support for it. So I guess, maybe I'm well suited to handle this issue, per se. I don't know, but that's who I am.
So far, so good. I think it's true, though, in not just cannabis industry, but in all forms of freedom. It makes strange bedfellows out of everybody. Pretty soon, people come together that it really doesn't matter the politics. We're looking to be free and operate with less government restriction. So tell me this, most people have heard about the OMMA. I think there's a new director, and how is his job performance going so far?
So it's interesting. We're actually, so far, we're cautiously optimistic with our new director, a lady, Adria Berry, who actually during the 788 campaign was on the no side of the issue in her work with the state chamber. And so Adria and I have gone back and forth a few times on some things, but she's a professional. And quite honestly, I am encouraged, not because I, know her and have had those interactions, but I know that she's professional, and she is probably something that we need right now. And that is, she has a political background as well. The previous three directors, not so much. And so I think that is something that probably will help. There have been a lot of disconnect at the Capitol as far as what needed to be done. There needs to be some strong leadership. And I think that she might bring that in. She's a really nice gal, but she is no pushover. And so,
my apologies for misstating her pronoun. So tell me, what is the Oklahoma State Cannabis Commission, and what happened during the challenge period since October 12th?
Yeah, so the Oklahoma State Cannabis Commission would be the new name that we would give to the OMMA as a freestanding state agency. Right now, cannabis as a whole is governed not only by OMA, but they're under the OSDH. So we don't really know who we're talking to a lot of times. Yeah, we're talking to the director. They're great, but there are a bunch of decision makers above that position. Also, cannabis is also industrial hemp. So we're regulated by the Department of Agriculture as well. So we have two different bureaucracies to deal with here in doing what we're doing. So we bring it all together under the Oklahoma State Cannabis Commission. And that kind of gives us some streamlining there. You wouldn't think, okay, create a new state agency and that streamlines government. For us, it absolutely does. And that's important. As far as where we are, we've got a hearing on December 14th before a Supreme Court referee to discuss the merits of the challenge that was brought against us. It's very similar to challenges that we have seen against other initiatives like this in the past. A lot of the challenge material has already been decided by the court at this point in time. So we're hopeful that they're able to kind of process this through and get us into the field. Ultimately, we will prevail in the challenge. It's just a matter of time.
So you're listening to Director of Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action, Jed Green, teaching us all about the two petitions before Oklahomans coming up soon. State Question 818 and 819 about medical marijuana and full access marijuana. So, Jed, I appreciate you joining us. You were saying about the new federal or the new government body would be Oklahoma State Cannabis Commission, but then OMMA would go away. Is that correct? I mean, OMMA would no longer be a thing.
So OMMA would simply, OMMA would simply be absorbed into the Cannabis Commission. Nothing really changes except for the title, and they're given a new level of authority and a commission.
Okay, so
we restructure.
you're not duplicating a bureaucracy. You're renaming
No.
the bureaucracy. Okay.
Right,
All
right.
Okay. You said about the Department of the State Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture are both involved in the industry, and that's one of the problems. Explain why.
Well, so what we've got is we've got the same plant. Cannabis is a plant. Hemp is a legal definition. Marijuana is a legal definition. So hemp is currently federally legal by the 2018 Farm Bill and is administered through state or tribal programs by the respective tribe or Department of Agriculture. And so agriculture has hemp. They have one methodology, one system for regulating that. And so then over at the OMMA, they deal with marijuana. And so they have a system for regulating that. There are strengths and weaknesses in both programs. But at the end of the day, you're talking about the same plant that needs the same set of consumer protections. And so a lot of us will grow both simultaneously. And again, you've got this same plant, two different legal definitions, and therefore we currently have two regulatory bodies.
So, the Department of Health gets involved all the way at the growing level?
The Department of Health is ultimately the head of the program. The OMMA is a department of the Department of Health.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So we've got all of the overburden. So let's say that we lose, like we recently did, our top executives at the health department, 1, 2, 3, all of a sudden they're gone. And we've seen that type of rollover. All of a sudden, who are we working with now? What's their understanding of cannabis policy? You know?
We have no idea. So tell us about what is the OBNDD? What is that?
That is the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs.
And are they connected to the State Department of Health?
They are not connected to the State Department of Health. They're a separate agency. They're the folks tasked with enforcing Title 63, which is basically narcotics laws here in the state. And so the OBN, deals with meth, fentanyl. They run into human trafficking. They deal with a lot of those type of issues as the law enforcement agency for the state on narcotics specifically. And so they currently, as involved as they are, is that after 3 years, they were finally able to get a memorandum of understanding with OMA to assist OMA in the actual enforcement of some of the laws that are on the books. The huge problem that we've had is we've had a lack of enforcement, and you can't have an open market without any enforcement. So we were left to run wild for 2 years. The dollars were there for enforcement, but for whatever reason, those agencies weren't able to come to an agreement. From my understanding, it's kind of on OMA, just to throw it out there. But now they have, under the new director, they've gotten that done. And so you're actually seeing OBN, who has always been ready to enforce narcotics laws in this state, has been, allowed to move forward on dealing with some of the illegal grow operations that popped up, not because of the law that we passed, but because folks in the government weren't doing their job.
Well, is it, and to give you a little 3D scrutiny and pushback, enforcement is a problem in manpower is a problem, and it's the most expensive thing in any business is the people you pay, your labor force. Enforcement is going to be a problem. And so how is Senate Bill 1033 tied into all this enforcement with the OBNDD?
Yeah, it's hard to get a job done no matter how many people you have if you don't show up for work.
They're just, it's going to be hard enforcement is one of the most expensive things to do, not just to pay the people to do it, but then what does the enforcement mean? What is the effect on the people and the jail system, et cetera? I do know that, let's answer that before I move on.
Right. Well, that's the effect that what we've seen as an effect of a lack of enforcement. And yes, it does take time to gear up, but they basically started gearing up about 3 months ago. So, it does take time, and they are working on it now. And that's good to see. But what happens is when it's just known that you can do whatever you want, then you have criminal organizations come in because they know that no one's going to. And what that has had the effect of is crushing legitimate businesses.
Right.
Crushing
But the
Oklahoma
bad money,
businesses.
the bad money chases the good money out.
Right.
And I did learn something in studying about this for this interview. There's a rural water strain, the water supply in rural areas, and then there's industry waste. Tell us about those problems from the illegal grows that we need enforcement on.
Well, again, that's one of those things when you have abnormally high numbers that have spiked up, there is going to be additional strain, and it is specifically to it really is specifically to rural water districts, not being ready for some of that burden. But again, if you didn't have 10 to 15% of the grow licenses, and a lot of them the big ones being illegal operations, you wouldn't have as much of a strain. In the petitions, we actually do dedicate dollars to rural water districts to help out with that. Water infrastructure is never a bad investment in our eyes. So yeah, there's that. And as far as like the rural waste, we actually do create a rural waste remediation fee to help kind of clean up some of the things, because there's going to be a process where we've got this spike in illegal activity. Oklahoma's got a smaller footprint than other states. As they are financed and they get serious and they get out, we will see this getting cleaned up. Senate Bill 1033 was actually the second legislative pass at compelling OMMA to form that memorandum of understanding that I was talking about. Okay. And so they got it, and it got done once it really, really kind of became an issue. In the petitions, we actually direct fund OBN to fulfill that role. So there's not really any excuses left.
Tell me about, so I'm interested, what kind of waste, are you just talking about, first of all, an illegal grow? Does that mean they don't have a license? They do have a license, but they're operating outside of regulation? What do you mean illegal grow?
So illegal grow technically means not by the statute and regulation that is in place. And so in either A, not pulling a license to begin with, but B, something that we have seen a lot of is what's called ghost ownership. 788 set forth that a Oklahoma company has to be, an Oklahoma licensee has to be 75% locally owned by residents of Oklahoma with a residency requirement. 25% could be out of state. And so what we saw hundreds, if not thousands, of licenses that have been pulled and are still actually on the registry now that were done by ghost owners, where you say you can see it easily. It's when you have one email address that has 300 grow licenses attached to it. It's pretty obvious what's going on there. And there are 4 or 5 of those, right? So you've got kind of that shade of illegal. And so that indicates some other things that have kind of gone on. But it's interesting. Everyone should know that Senate Bill 1033, one thing that it did is that grow and process licenses now in the state can be up to 40% owned by publicly traded companies. That went into effect November 1st. So the other note on that residency rule is at the point that we do hit federal legalization, then that is going to not be able to withstand 10th Amendment challenge. In other words, interstate commerce will strike down that residency requirement. There's some action in the courts right now coming out of Missouri on that. But that's kind of a little bit of a deep dive into what makes some technically illegal now. It's just basically fraudulent filings.
And so this becomes, I mean, am I accurate to say this is what you'd call white, collar crime? This isn't violent crime. It's a registration licensing crime, correct? Well,
so let's imagine that I'm a entity that solicits individuals and communities from out of state to come to the green gold rush in Oklahoma and says, hey, come here, give me $67,000 for a license and we'll take care of the rest of it. You don't have to sign anything. Yeah. I mean, I've got a brown collar on, but I think I recognize a white collar
Well,
when
no,
I see
okay.
it.
I maybe I didn't make what I'm saying is if you are an illegal grower and you've got a license but it got pulled, and what you're saying it got pulled, which means it's no longer a valid license, but they're still growing. Is that what you're talking about?
There's some of that. There's kind of a garden variety going on
Okay,
there.
so
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that I'm trying to weed into what I think is the biggest problem is the enforcement issue, because I don't. Not only is it going to be is it manpower, but it is a nonviolent crime, isn't it? If you're violating the, and I'm not saying that's not, I'm not trying to minimize it. What I'm saying is they're going to place resources on violent crime first, and that's why part of the reason this enforcement of OMMA rules is falling behind that. Am I off, or does that sound logical?
Well, no, it is. I mean, there's a concern about manpower. And I mean, good help is the hardest thing to find. Again, the point is simply they're off to a late start. So that exacerbates the situation. And so
Gotcha.
now they're having to play catch up to a degree. The tough thing about some of the illegal grows, which, there's been a lot of testimony about it, a lot of it is linked to cartels and international, criminal organizations. And there's human trafficking involved. They're bringing in other, harder core drugs like, methamphetamine, fentanyl, that type of stuff. So it is kind of a tough deal. And that's one of the, biggest concerns that everyone has, and obviously we don't need that running legitimate businesses out of business. And at the same time, on some of these, there's some bad activity going on.
Well, I mean, it sounds like standard procedure in any industry. It's a few bad apples gives the whole group the bad name. I can't imagine,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've learned a little bit about industry waste, and what you're saying is you've already got plans for a remediation fund that cleans up these issues with waste. Is there waste problems now, or you're looking toward waste problems when you shut down illegal grows?
Well, I think that that's what you typically see is that, what folks talk about as waste. We've heard stories. Well, there was a lot of runoff from this big illegal grow and it, poisoned the pond or whatever.
Gotcha.
Let's keep in mind that any waste issue that cannabis has an industry in the state pales in comparison to just about every other issue. I mean, the fast food restaurants are generating more toxic waste than we are, right? So,
chicken feed and chicken
but
droppings.
think about it. Yeah, think about it. Think about what we've proposed is kind of like what the OERB is supposed to do with oil site cleanup. Let's say that, you've got some of these illegal grows that are taken out. There's 70 dilapidated greenhouses out there.
Okay,
Someone comes, go and clean that up. As far as like runoff from watering plants, I mean, you're talking about some fertilizer salts, generally speaking. There's just not that.
No, I see
it's
now.
Not, it's not like a.
About.
Yeah,
I get
and so
you.
when folks are talking about waste, we're addressing it, and that's one thing that we have done is we're very proactive in our petitions to address basically anything that is maybe an issue, kind of an issue, could be an issue. We're looking to kind of clean things up because, like you said, a few bad apples makes the whole bushel stink.
Standard procedure, right? And one of the things you're trying to do is we're headed to the break here in just a minute, but one of the things I want to talk about on the other side of the break is to define for the audience streamlined regulations and how we're going to streamline it between hemp versus marijuana, industrial versus recreational. But for now, we're going to send you back down to the planet's surface, and we'll bring you back in. Look at that guy. Nothing gets past Moto. Hey, Moto, you want to be on the show next week? We're going to bring these boys back in just anytime soon. All right, stay tuned. We're coming right back after this exciting break. Adjust your cup and get ready to rumble. There's a new place to party and catch all the greatest UFC fights. It's the Armbar, located at 51st and Peoria. Submit to the Armbar, a full-scale assault on your senses with 6,700 big screen TVs streaming nothing but UFC fights and videos of people getting their head kicked. You've got to beat your way in with elbows flying just to get a seat. And if you can survive drinking, it means you're one tough bastard. Make it inside the Armbar at 51st and Peoria. You'll be amazed at the technology. While you're mesmerized, the waitress may give you a roundhouse kick to the throat and you'll find yourself stumbling against the octagon. It's like slam dancing meets a full-service restaurant, bar, and grill. With shots so cheap, we'll give you up to full 60 seconds to recover after a blow so low. Step into our GIP room where you'll see videos that'll guarantee you to get wet. Whether you're looking to party or just work out, the Armbar is the place for you. So by the time you leave, you'll realize your face has been messed up, and your wife won't be mad at you for being out drinking with the boys. She'll feel sorry for you, ass kicked. They used to say no pain, no gain. No ground, no pound. This ain't your grandma's hookah bar. Submit to the Armbar, 51st and Peoria.
Connect the Dots with Tommy K is brought to you by the Armbar. Submit to the Armbar. Warning. Connect the Dots with Tommy K is a broadcast production that includes comedic content designed for those that listen and people who read. Punchlines from the headlines. If you don't know the news, you can't get the joke. A new study on global warming has presented evidence regarding climate change that flies in the face of conventional theories. The latest findings debunk the climate change hypothesis by proving that the climate does not change. According to the scientists at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the temperature of any given environment is directly associated with the time of the reading. Previous pioneers of meteorology simply disregarded this moment of instant related to their research. Today's innovative understanding of physics explains that consensus scientists cannot disassociate the thermometer reading from the space-time continuum without violating the law of non-contradiction. Today's experts conclude time changes, not the climate. If you don't know the news, you can't get the joke. Tommy K, connecting the dots.
The American Constitutional Republic. Affairs of State in Oklahoma. The beliefs, principles, opinions, and views of people just like me. This is 3D Politics. Here we are again with me, the Verbal Viking. We are getting ready to bring back in to talk for another half hour Jed Green from O.R.C.A. That is Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action. Let's just make sure that he's there. Are you there? See if we can.
I'm here.
I
I'm
can
here.
hear him. Let's see if we can beam him in. This just gets more exciting every time I do it. And there
it's
he
exciting
is.
for me too. There we go. I made it in one piece.
Just amazing how it works. All right, so we are rocking and rolling. We are talking about changing or adding, that is the title, Oklahoma State Cannabis Commission to the OMMA and do what we call streamlined regulations. What do you mean, Jed, or how are you going to streamline regulations?
Well, so yeah, so this is one thing that's really really important. Number one is that we are we're an industry that's currently generating $200 million a year into this state, and so we want a real focus on making sure this is done correctly. This industry, this community, for our entire nation is still in its infancy, and the potential for Oklahoma is amazing. We've created over 50,000 jobs. There are 14,000 business licenses out there. I mean, this is, for anyone that has ever said we want to see a free market exercise, this is about as close as you're going to get. And we're markedly different from every other state because of the way that we're doing this, and we're getting markedly different results. And part of that is the lower level of regulation that we have right now, but it's still a lot. And so we want to streamline that. Again, it's same plants being regulated by two different entities right now. They are starting to talk. That's great. But we want our own commission where we know that rollover that affects another state agency doesn't affect us. We don't want anyone else's baggage.
Right. Even if I can see where you're having to deal with the State Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture, both involved, and really the State Department of Health, in my opinion, shouldn't be involved until it becomes, medicine. I can understand why agriculture is involved when you're growing, but because of, I guess, the psychotropic issues and the way that the reefer madness mentality started, we've got the Department of Health involved first. Does that sound right or wrong?
Well, that's, I mean, the reason the Department of Health ultimately is involved to begin with is because the authors of 788 specified them. It just seemed to make sense on paper. Medicinal marijuana, Department of Health. Okay, that seems like where it should go. So that's kind of what occurred there. There has been a push, and there have been bills filed that have even passed the House to actually remove OMA from the OSDH. We may see that again. The effort last session was to move it to the ABLE Commission, which, it's practical in one sense, but anyway. But again, this is a plant that's being grown, and the majority of licenses is ultimately agricultural. And so it would kind of make sense to be at ODAF, but ODAF has had not a lot of interest in regulating marijuana. Their concerns is, well, how does that affect us federally? We don't want to do it. But they do the industrial hemp program, which industrial hemp could be a far greater economic boon to our state than marijuana could be. So the problem is we don't have the infrastructure for it. The problem is that there's no funding going into that program. And so we want to work to address that. There's another problem, and it's a federal issue that affects us on this. A lot of folks may have heard of, say, Delta 8 or Delta 10, D8, D10, THC. These are cannabinoids that are produced from legitimate CBD oil that comes through that industrial hemp program. And so what we've got is a situation where at the federal level, we're quasi-legal. I don't have to have a license to provide you with Delta 8 or Delta 10 THC. There's no, hey, get this. There's the COAs, the certificates of analysis, the testing that we get done on the medical marijuana before folks consume it. That is not done in a required manner for industrial hemp. So you've got this weird gray area where we've got quasi-legal THC, but because the FDA takes no action, the administration doesn't, at the federal level, isn't getting anything done there for us. We're left with this massive consumer safety hole. Who in charge of what? Well, in the meantime, everyone's doing this, and you've got product that's substitute products. So now you can have basically marijuana sales without a license. Why? Because lack of actual action where it is truly needed, by the state. And so we're going to go ahead in the petitions and make that lift because, we feel it's our responsibility to do so. And so that's the type of streamlining that I'm talking about. There are also other One thing that's interesting down that consumer safety, which we are number one advocates for consumer safety, always have been. However, with the current regs and laws in place, one joint that is purchased, that material has been tested 3, possibly 4 times now, the same material over and over and over again at a cost of, that racks up. For example, commodity cannabis that's just grown out under the sun. It can be produced for, $10, $15, $20 a pound. If it goes through that testing process, which would actually only need to be tested once, ground up, homogenized, tested, filled into a joint. Okay, that tells you what's in it. Instead, it gets tested from grower to processor, processor to dispensary, and then tested again if the dispensary manufactures that. So you've got potentially those steps in the process. There are some other hinky things where you can kind of get around that some and still maintain it, but the problem is that there's just way more mandated testing than what is really required to ensure consumer safety. And so that's the type of stuff that we want to streamline.
Yeah, clearly the different governmental bureaucracies are tripping over their own rules and regs. If everybody were left free like we're supposed to be, there would be no quasi-legality. It'd be like, oh, you want this, you want that. And I'm not suggesting we operate unsafely. I'm just saying that all of these rules and regulations are based on all the man-made dogma and doctrine that goes into it without us really operating in a free market. I know that the one of the reasons that you have stated that you want constitutional changes instead of just a bill that goes in is because the citizens of the community feel threatened every time that the legislation goes into session. You never know if it's going to stick or not because it's such a volatile issue. It's also, they whine, like you were saying earlier, they whine around here for years and years about, we want to be a top 10 state. Let's be one of the greatest states. Let's do something that makes us different. Well, it takes effort, and you have to try. And this is an effort where we're having great traction, and yet still people are that are sticks in the mud. They don't want to change what they're doing or take on more effort or work out a little harder to do a little bit more around here. I've got a question from one of our valued viewers. It has to do with laws on seed clone sales in the state of Oklahoma. Are they trying to make it where growers cannot order out-of-state seeds? Or is that what they're interested in doing? And if they are trying to keep growers from ordering out-of-state seeds by laws on seed clone sales, how is that going to affect the industry?
Okay, so that's actually a great question. It demonstrates the ODAF-OMA overlap. Okay, so if I am a grower and I want to sell seeds, I have to have a seed license from ODAF as well as a license from OMA. So I have to be dual licensed, duplicative cost to sell seeds. Now, a seed license is reasonably cheap. It's $2,500. It's $25, I believe. Here's the thing: clones as well. If I'm operating as a nursery, then I need to have a nursery license from ODAF. In addition to, so I've got duplicative stuff going on there, right. And that's something that that can be fixed. But when you talk about two state agencies, playing with a nuclear football as to who's going to handle this, or who wants this? If they both want it, then they fight. Okay, now they got to work that out with the legislature, and 15 years later, we're still where we're at. So right. That's why we need to get there's so many examples of that. Now, to the question, what's interesting is the definition of a seed. And I am not an attorney. I am not giving legal advice here to anyone. Okay. As much as I'm going to throw some common sense out there, though. What I'm going to tell you is that those are the licensing requirements for seeds and for clones right now. That's kind of where you'd be at. You can have grower to grower sale. So grower to grower in the state, you can transfer, but seed dealing and cloning, if you're doing it, is set up as a greenhouse. Now, to be a nursery license, you basically have to be in the business of dealing directly to the public, more or less. Okay. for it to really be something that would be up. If you set up as the TLC of weed, ODAF's going to come and see you. Right?
Teach me what does ODAF stand for?
Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry. It's Department of Ag.
Okay.
Department of Agriculture. Yeah.
All right. They keep
So
adding
again,
letters.
Yeah, and it's alphabet soup time. So
Right.
anyway.
Okay, this is interesting. I did not know there was some restriction between grower to grower, but you were telling us that if you set up a thing to be a nursery, you're basically dealing with the public.
Right. And so here's the thing is that for folks that are really versed in what I'm talking about right now, they're probably looking at me and they're probably, screaming, well, that's not quite. Well, here's the thing. Yes, generalities, but what it points to is the number one thing, and that's our problem: gray area. We don't need the gray area. That's why we're doing this, is to clean it up and make sure it's clearly lined out who is what and who is where. Let's clean up the gray area. It's part of the mess. It's not illegal grows are all the mess that we need to clean up. It's also the messiness that we've got in our bureaucracy. And we're trying to set these folks up for success. We don't want it. We're not trying to punish them. We want everyone to be successful here, primarily the state as a whole.
I'm learning a lot here. I understand now what you mean by streamlining. There's a lot of duplicitous regulation, et cetera, licensing and whatever. But I also see the pertinence of this question with the quasi federal government we have that's almost out of money somehow this weekend. How do you order seeds across state lines when it's an illegal substance? So here's the thing: is that at least within the boundaries of the United States, you'll have, like, if anyone that knows that's attempted to import seeds from, say, out of the country, say Amsterdam or locations like that, they can be seized. The DEA would take them, but very rarely are there any charges related to that. They just seize those seeds coming into the country. Internally within the country, it's no big deal to bounce them around in between states. You don't have that same type of customs barrier there, right? Okay. So here's the interesting thing: you have to look at what the definition of a seed is. A seed is a seed until it germinates and it has its first 2 true leaves. Then it is a seedling. So a seed per se, if you test a marijuana seed, it's going to come back 0% THC. The legal definition of marijuana is basically part of this plant that contains 0.3 or more THC. If it's less than that, it's hemp. So if you could have a bunch of marijuana seeds, test them, they're less than 0.3 THC, that's not marijuana. That's a seed. Okay. I don't know if it's hemp. I don't know if it's marijuana until it sprouts and grows and we can test it to see it's got THC in it. We can't tell you if it's hemp. We can't tell you if it's marijuana. A seed is just a seed, and therefore seeds are shipped around as collectibles, and they have been for decades, man. It's not that big of a deal. Yes, this is true. This is a real deal. You're listening to the fine technical definition of a seed and a seedling from Director Jed Green of Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action. I really appreciate you bringing your expertise and all of your years of work on this to the 3D Politics Show and audience. This is some cutting-edge information for all Oklahomans about how Oklahoma can become a top 10 state by moving forward of all the other states in these areas of streamlining their marijuana laws. Let's talk quickly in the last segment about taxes. It's $1 billion industry spending on State Question 788 said 75-25. That's 75% education, 25% mental health. Tell me what that means.
So what that means is that basically there's a 7% excise tax on medical marijuana in addition to state, local, and municipal sales tax. So you have that. We have license fees as a revenue source, be them commercial or patient licensees. And so all of those taxes combined is basically, and fees combined right now, it looks like it's going to hit about $200 million this year. OMA's got a budget of a little south of $40 million. So you have rough projection for the years are going to hit about $160 million of revenue out of this program after everything is paid for. Keep in mind, folks, This can be a standalone agency. It will pay for itself. This isn't able. Okay. So, yeah. So that terrible thing. So anyway, I said it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I'm trying to keep it in the guardrails right now. I'm really trying
Everybody
to.
seems. Why is everybody on their best behavior tonight? Okay.
Well,
ahead.
here's the thing. I'll say that. Yeah. There's
Except
a lot of
for
good
Moto.
information. There's a lot of good information that we need to get out there, but
all right.
yeah, that guy.
Okay, so a bunch of money is coming in. It is important for Oklahomans to understand this can support itself financially, the enforcement, the management, etc. But tell me how the excise tax phases out over a year, and how do you phase in the 22%? And I want to know how it's broken down. Who collects how much of the new taxes?
Okay, so yeah, everything as it does right now continues to go to OMA. Remember, that residue that's left over, that additional revenue, is split 25% to mental health and 75% to education right now.
Okay.
Fun note for everyone, just know this is out there. The dollars that have racked up in the program to this point for mental health have not yet been transferred to the Department of Mental Health. There's 2 years of backlog. There are millions of dollars sitting there. Now, credit to the new director. She's the one that made us aware of this, and she's working to get the MOU in place to transfer those dollars. So credit to Director Barry on that. Now, what we do is real simple. What we do is, if we pass the recreational effort, if we pass 819, what happens is that it puts a 15% excise tax on recreational sales. Comparative to other states, that's on the low end of the spectrum. It really is. Those 37% in Washington state, multiple layers beyond that. It's one of the things where they're screwing up is they're greedy, they're over-regulating, they're overtaxing, and so they're forcing a situation where legitimate business can't compete with illegitimate business. So they're getting greedy, so they're not getting what they should, and they're effing themselves. So so what happens here is that we get a 15% tax rate on excise tax in addition to the other taxes. So you're looking at like a 23% tax rate on recreational is what it is. However, we are doing this, to again preserve our medical program and benefit our patients. And so what we do is, if recreational passes, the 7% excise tax on medical is eliminated over the course of a year in basically quarterly increments. Okay. So after 1 year, it goes away. We take a chunk off at 3 months, chunk off at 6 months, chunk off at 9 months, at a year, it's gone. What we want to do is we don't want to break anything. And so we allow for a phase out of that. The 15% excise on recreational goes into effect, I believe, 90 days after passage. Recreational would be available. And since we're not requiring duplicate licenses, another error that many states have made, a license for medical, a license for, no, it's all the same product. You'll have your different grade, your different intended use at the end, which is the difference. And so no need to duplicate the systems. Let's just get on with it. So what'll happen is the determination of the tax rate and the price you pay is done at the point of sale system at the register in the dispensary. 90 days, the dispensaries have to make a software upgrade basically in their POS, and they're ready to go. The state opens up a bank account for it, and there it flies. So, I mean, it is as seamless of an addition of recreational that you could do into a medical program. Again, one thing we've learned from a lot of the states, especially a lot of the ones out west, is what not to do. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of real,
excellent.
That's it. I'm a homer. And so I don't automatically assume, they're doing this, that's what we should do. No, hold on. I keep hearing that's a debacle. Why is it a debacle? Okay, well, let's not do the debacle. We're already off and running again with a very advanced, very open program, and to a large degree, it's working exceptionally well. Let's clean it up. Let's streamline it a little bit more, and let's, set this place up for success.
So let's talk a little bit about the petition. I wish in some bizarro world that the federal government would have to go to the trouble to get a bunch of people to sign a petition and verify signatures to have us all agree that we will vote on whether we will have a vaccine or not. But they make the weed illegal to the point where we have to beg to use what grows naturally while they force things on us that are unnatural with a needle. The petition, tell me about the failure of legislature in the veto of home delivery. There was it was like a technical issue of home delivery, and this caused a failure of one of the petitions. Tell us how to avoid that issue.
Oh, wow. Well, that's we've got home delivery in the petitions, by the way.
Okay, so that's fixed anyway. But these types of issues to where we don't want them vetoed over a simple issue.
Okay, well, and see, that's the problem. And that's why we're here. And that's when, okay, we as a people empower the government. All power from the government comes from us. And so, if we're going to exercise that power, we need to understand when is a good time to do it. And what I have seen the last 3 years, I've seen a lot of people making a lot of good effort, a lot of sticks in the mud being sticks in the mud. And the cumulative effect is that we are not growing the program and developing it and doing what needed to be done at the rate at which we are set up for growth. They cannot keep up. And so the problem here is that there is not the political willpower. I could go into a little bit of a dive on why specifically a omnibus bill that would have done a lot of good was vetoed due to home delivery specifically, and the political brinksmanship and folks being upset with each other and sacrificing each other's stuff. Okay, when we see that, we have to step back and say, okay, you know what? We can either beat up on these guys into eternity on this deal, or we can recognize, hey, you know what? It might be easier to get 500,000 votes than 50% of both chambers. Right. And we just have to recognize that. I believe we have that power. It's our responsibility as well. We have to know when to exercise it. And now's the time.
Jed Green, Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action, here with me tonight. I very much so appreciate you coming to 3 really good pieces of news. Something about scanned signatures on a petition, voter registration drive. Tell us about those, and then the economic benefits for tourism in the state if we can work this through.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's one thing that we'll be doing. You have to be a registered voter in order to have your signature count, just like have your vote count. So we'll be doing voter registration along with the signature drive. Everyone get registered to vote, even if this is the only thing you're going to show up for. I don't care. Sign up, do it. Let's go from there. And so
tell me about the scanned signatures. This is an advancement. Is that right?
Yes, this will be the first, these will likely be the first petitions, signature sheets that are all going to be run through a scanner that is going to verify the validity against the voter database of every single one. Typically, until now, 5% of the signatures were verified by the state. The only thing that would be different would be if a challenge was issued to the validity of those signatures, which can be done. It was last done, I believe, I think it was done with Tabor some time back. But with the new system in place, if all of your folks are registered, this actually kills any sort of signature challenge because 100% of them have been verified. Right. And I personally look forward to having 100% verification of the signatures of those who showed up to vote. I think that's a simple bar. So to that end, everyone, if you have not voted in the last 2 years, register to your current address. If you do not vote for a period of time for whatever reason, out of the town, don't care, they all suck, whatever you don't show up for 2 years, you need to make sure that you are registered now so that you have not been purged from the voter rolls.
I know you can find out more about the organization at O.R.C.A.OK.com. That's O.R.C.A. OK.com. Where else can they find more information about you, Director Jed Green, and this information about the petitions coming up? How do they find you?
That'll be where to find it. We'll be at we'll be on the website. I mean, we've got a Facebook page, O.R.C.A. Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action. You can find us there. We're just letting that grow. We basically get thrown in Facebook jail if we even say the word cannabis half the time. So we only, it'll be all organic there, right? We can't, boost ads or anything. So we'll start doing some more work there. Otherwise, we're going to be reaching out to folks. If you are interested, pay attention to your local dispensaries, because this is where we're going to be gathering those signatures. We've got 400,000 patients in this state, and we will set it up to where, hopefully everyone has a familiar spot. And if your dispensary doesn't have the petition, ask them why they do not have the petition or where they can go to get it. But we'll be reaching out. We'll make sure, more is known.
That is excellent. Anything else you need to tell them, Jed, before I beam you back down to the planet's surface?
I'd just say this: Oklahoma, it's God, guns, and ganja. Let's do it.
Well, very good. Hey, once again, I appreciate you being here. And hey, let's get Andrea. What is her name? Andrea Berry?
Adria. Yeah, Adria Berry.
Adria Berry. Let's get her on the show to talk about more of this stuff that's up and coming. Looks like a great opportunity for Oklahoma. Jed Green, thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you.
We'll see you again next time.
Out.
There you go. Oh, yes. Very good. Jed Green, Director of Oklahoma's for Responsible Cannabis Action. We appreciate him coming out here this evening on 3D Politics. Don't forget, next year we're going to be moving into 3D Culture Wars with music, art, and entertainment. If you are a musician, songwriter, singer, artist, if you do comedy, entertainment of any type, original, let's talk about it. Let's get your video on the air, because culture is upstream of tech. So we will see you guys next week on 3D Politics with me, Tommy McKay, Viking. Email me and send your info to verbalviking@gmail.com. We'll see you next Monday.